Good morning everyone. So today we are going to continue the series of economic topics, and today we are going to cover economy inflation related issues. In our last lecture we have discussed inflation, deflation, disinflation, reflation, apart from that we have also discussed aggregate demand. So aggregate demand means total demand, that will be C, that stands for consumption, I, G plus X minus M. So C stands for consumption, that is public consumption, I stands for investment by the private players, G stands for investment by the government or public expenditure. This one is public expenditure, this one is investment, this one is consumption by public, Then X stands for exports, M stands for imports. Now this is aggregate demand or total demand. Aggregate means gross, total. So this is the total demand in an economy. So if aggregate demand that is AD is equal to aggregate supply that is AS, this will be a situation of full employment. That means in this situation the price level will be general price level. Why so? First thing first, when aggregate demand and aggregate supply are equal, that means neither there is higher requirement nor there won't be any higher supply. So demand is not increasing, so there is no need to increase the production further. Therefore, there is no need to hire more people. That means it is a situation of peak employment. Peak means maximum. Peak employment. Then why it will be a situation of general price level? Because both demand and supply are equal. So this will be situation of general price level. So in general price level, this will be like this one. So this is situation of inflation, this is disinflation, this is deflation, this is reflation. We have already covered these topics in our previous lecture. So this will be a situation of supply is greater than demand. This will be a situation of demand is greater than supply. So at general price level, that means at this yellow level, D, that is demand, is equal to S, that is supply. So this is first situation. So far we have covered aggregate demand, aggregate supply, that means total supply in the economy or total production in the economy, then full employment level, full employment level, full employment level, then we have covered general price level, general price level. Next is the types of inflation. Types of inflation. Types of inflation. So first thing first, demand pull. Demand pull. That means demand is higher than supply. Since demand is higher than supply, that means the price will be higher. Price will be higher. Why so? Because more number of people are buying and the supply is limited. D is greater than S. So price will go up and this will lead to demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation. On the other hand, cost push means the cost of production has increased. Cost of production has increased. Okay, then there is monetary inflation. Monetary inflation. What is monetary inflation? See, our demand is dependent on the money we have. Our demand depends on the money we have. So if we have extra money, we are going to spend that money and therefore demand will increase. So demand in economy will increase if we will have extra money or surplus money. Then this will lead to higher demand. Now in this situation, if we consider supply as same, so supply is more or less same, but demand has increased because of higher money supply. That is going to create a problem. So this will lead to another situation of D is greater than S. Again, it will lead to demand pull. Now this demand pull can be because of extra money printed by RBI. So if RBI print fresh currency, then it may lead to increased demand and subsequently it will lead to demand pull inflation. Let's consider it this way. Suppose in the economy earlier there were only 100 rupees. Now RBI printed 10 more rupees. So now it is also in the economy. Because money is more, so money supply is greater, this will lead to more demand. Considering supply as same or constant, that will lead to inflation. So in simplest term, monetary inflation means the monetary authority of our country, that is RBI, monetary authority printed new currency which increased the money supply in economy and subsequently the demand in the economy increased. Next type is profit induced inflation. Profit induced Profit induced inflation. In simplest term, it means the companies want to increase their profit, therefore they have increased the cost of their product. Suppose, let's consider this pen again. Previously, the cost of production of this pen was 10 rupees, profit was of say 2 rupees, and the price was 12 rupees. Now, the company want to increase its profit margin, so the cost of production is still 10, but now company want to earn 5 rupee per pen, so the price has increased to 15 rupees. Please note that in this case the cost of production is same. Cost of production has not increased, but the final price has increased. Why so? Because now the supplier want to earn higher profit margin. Profit margin. So this will lead to profit induced inflation. Profit means you need more profit, therefore you increase the price. So this type of inflation will be profit induced inflation. Now for this to happen, one thing is important. You need to understand this. Suppose there is one company, Pen 1. This is the company which supply these pens. So if this company will increase price, but another company, Pen 2, is still supplying at 12 rupees, then people won't be willing to spend these 15 rupees. That is why for profit induced inflation, there is one important situation, that is there should be monopoly or limited suppliers or limited options. Monopoly means single supplier. So if there will be single supplier, then only people will be willing to pay higher price. Otherwise, they will switch to the competitor. So monetary inflation stands for, monetary is because of new currency or new printed notes. Profit induced is because of higher profit margin decided by the company. Demand pull, cost push. Then next type is skewed inflation. Skewed inflation means the inflation, please note this term skewed, it means the impact is limited on few sectors only. That means inflation is there, but only in few specific sector. For example, let's consider one situation of vegetables. So the price of vegetables is more or less same, but suppose the price of onion and tomato has increased. Rest of the vegetables are still available at more or less same price, but there is significant inflation in these two vegetables. This will be an example of skewed inflation. That means inflation is there only in specific or very limited areas. Rest of the areas or rest of the sectors are performing well without much inflation. Next type is shrink inflation. Shrink inflation. Shrink means to reduce its size. So sometimes in order to tackle inflation, producers reduce quantity. Let's consider one example. Suppose, again it is hypothetical, suppose in 2011 the price of Parle-G biscuit was 5 rupees, and let's suppose at that point of time company was providing 75 gram biscuit packet in 5 rupees. Now in 2023 the price is still 5, but now company is only providing 50 gram. So they have shrinked the size, or the quantity has been shrinked. Quantity has been shrinked. So this is example of shrinkflation. We have covered skewed inflation, shrinkflation. Next we are going to cover stagflation. Stagflation. So it is a combination of actually two words. One is stagnant, another is inflation. So stagnant, another is inflation. Stagnant means the economic growth is stagnant. Stagnant means it is not growing much. Now there is a problem. Because economy is not growing, that means new employment opportunities are not there. Apart from that, if economic growth is stagnant, that will also specify the level of unemployment. So it is a combination of three things: A, stagnant economic growth, B, unemployment, and C, inflation. Now first thing that should come in your mind, that if economic growth is stagnant and if people are unemployed, then the demand is low, then why there is inflation? So let's consider the example of COVID or lockdown due to COVID. So in lockdown, the factories were closed, and a lot of people lost their jobs. So unemployment was high. Since people were unemployed, that means they were not receiving their salaries, so their expense, or in simplest term, the demands were lower. So demands were lower, that is why the production was also limited. So production was reduced. A, because there was lockdown. B, the demand was low, that is why production was limited. So production was limited, that is why not much new employment opportunities were there, not much new jobs were there. Apart from that, due to lockdown, the transportation was impacted badly. So transportation was blocked, and that is why the supply chain was disrupted. Supply chain was disrupted. Since supply chain was disrupted, that means whatever demand was there, it was not being fulfilled by the supply. Why so? Because supply was hampered due to lockdown. That means transportation sector was facing problems due to lockdown. Therefore, supply was very limited, and that is why there was inflation. In fact, you might have noticed that during those times, the price of vegetables and the price of fruits was very, very high. Even though a lot of unemployment was there, still the price of vegetables and fruits was very, very high because the transportation was facing problems. That is why supply was unusual. That means there was kind of uncertainty in the supply. So this is a situation of stagflation. Next type is structural inflation. In simplest term, it means there are structural issues between the supplier and the demand. So there are barriers, kind of barriers or limitations between supply and demand. For example, one simplest example, problem in transportation due to poor infrastructure. One simple example. Another would be, say, wastage of food grains due to lack of storage facility. So structural issues means anything that is acting as a barrier or limitation between the supply and demand. So we have sufficient food grains, but because of lack of storage facility, there was huge wastage, and that is why supply was hampered. Next subtopic is inflationary gap. And deflationary gap. Inflationary gap means, first thing first, what is the situation of inflation? In general circumstances, inflation means demand is greater than supply. Again, in general circumstances I am saying. Of course, there are exceptional situations where even though demand is lower, still price can be higher. So, but we are talking about general circumstance. So, D is greater than S. In this case, S, that is supply, is greater than demand. So, the gap between demand and supply, is known as deflationary gap. That means supply is higher than demand. So, this gap is known as deflationary gap. In this scenario, demand is higher than supply. So, this will be leading to inflationary gap. So, we have covered I gap, that is inflationary gap. Inflationary gap means the gap between demand and supply. Deflationary gap means the gap between supply and demand. Supply and demand. So these were the types of inflation. In the next lecture, we are going to cover few more topics related to inflation. Thank you.